Right. So, what we discussed in the last session about organization structure changes, okay, that part was discussed in the previous session. In context to the claim center application is concerned, from the technical business analyst point of view, because not only functional side, right? Because functional knowledge, okay, but technical understanding for the applications is always needed. So when we are working on the business analyst side from the claim center, there are two things we must be knowing. One is about authentication and second is an authorization. Okay, there are two things, authentication and authorization. So authentication authorization, to perform authentication authorization for different purposes, because whatever the username and password we have given using the front end desktop application when we are entering into the claim application, because claims data, whatever the data we are managing, the customer data, everything must be in encrypted format, and so that the data cannot be viewed or seen by others outside. It is not something possible because it's complete. The authentication and authorization will be made over here. So whatever the required security third-party tools we are using, everything will be used. So general authentication authorization, already using captcha security or adding some two numbers, right? So these are the additional security for login credentials was already known to you, because that is something which we do in regular intervals in usually, right? That is a common thing we do it. Apart from that, being into business analyst, when authentication authorization is required, so when you are configuring the application, that's where this is something you are discussing today. We are discussing today. Because whenever we are working on claim center application, whenever we are working on the claim center application, it is always important wherein we need to see uh, what are the configuration guidelines we have to follow. Okay, so when we are following the configuration guidelines, it's not only about the changes we are making on the user interface level or workflow levels, but it is also equally important for us to understand the security aspects of the application and what are the standards that are to be followed and what are the different principles we have to follow. This is where generally oath principle we call it as oath. OAUTH. Let me write on here. Right? So OAUTH, right? So oath 2.2 is what something we are using now. So oath means authentication, authorization. This is what generally oath is all about. So using this authentication, authorization, oath principles, whatever the security you are going to provide, especially to log into the existing application. So that must be knowing to the business analyst, because if you want to write down the requirements or when there is any configurational changes you are making, so this authenticated authorization process or how this data has to be protected or login credentials to be protected depends on the business rules of the organization, because organization to organization, those business rules are being varied. So both principles are something relating to that stuff. That is where something which we must be knowing. So when you're talking about authentication authorization, I'm talking about. So both principles are being used so that whatever the activities you are performing when we are working on the claim application. So as a claim representative in the front end, I'm talking about, not the supervisor level or not the adjuster level I'm talking about. I'm talking about the front end team who are processing the claims. They process the claims using their login credentials. There, what kind of security principles that has to be adopted, those requirements has to be updated by a BA. This is point number one. Point number two, once the claim processes were done, normally there will be a clearing house. Normally in banking, transaction you see, there is a concept called ACH. I think you might be knowing about that. ACH. ACH stands for annual clearing houses. Means there are some clearing houses that verify, validate the claim process. For example, there is a claim form which was submitted by the team for verification and validation purpose. The very first thing where we call it as claim scrubber in between. In between that, claim scrubber will be there. Claim scrubber will verify and validate whatever the data given by whatever the data given by the user who has submitted the claim is right or not. For example, whatever the required policy number for the particular vehicle, let's say vehicle insurance, a vehicle claim is something we are doing. So that vehicle number must be given properly, the vehicle registered vehicle number. Next, policy number. For example, the person has taken in four-wheeler policy, auto policy was taken. That policy number has to be mentioned very clear there. Name of owner who owns that vehicle must be mentioned in that. Everything has to be verified and validated. This is where usually we call it as claim scrubber come into picture. So claim scrubber will verify and validate the information was given right or not. If they feel that this, once the verification is done, if they feel that the complete the process is clear, and at the same time, if all the required information they have given was right, then claim processing will be taken place further. To what extent claim settlement done, right? So is it 100% or 80%? Depends on the type of damage it was happened. As an example, if I have given, for example, from four-wheeler vehicles we have taken. So 100% warranty, of course, this may vary slightly, but as an example, in generalized statement, I'm giving this. For example, if a car was met with an accident, claim process initiated. When the claim process initiated for the vehicle, 100% clear, 100% reimbursement will be given for engine, car engine. I'm talking about engine, which is main part of the car. But whereas for the body, they may not be providing 100%. They may give you 60% or 40%. Depends on the kind of component of the body they have used. Because now and then, many of the vehicles were fiber body. And then that is not iron body. Because in the olden days, if you see, cars were manufactured with iron body. Now, most of the vehicles for fiber body, fiber. So a fiber body, of course, hard fiber, I can say. But that can be easily breakable if some incident, unfortunate incident happen. So they don't give you 100% reimbursement for that. Okay, they may give you 40% or 60%. So claims, once the claim process, if this process of claim, whatever I have explained with you so far, if this process to be continued, for example, if you want to process this, it is always important for us to perform claim scrubber. This is where this AA process comes into picture. We need to authenticate and authorize the user ID, user ID credentials, which was given by the user, whatever the desktop activities you are performing. And subsequently, that information will be moved on to the claim center data, whatever the claims you are managing the data, you are managing there. So if you are managing the data, whatever the claim scrubber we have, that claim scrubber will verify and validate the data, whatever the information they have given is right or not. So once the information was right, finally, this information will be sent to the claim settlement people, the insurance company. So that insurance company will process the claim, and how much percentage of the claim settlements was done by them and all everything may vary. So for this process, whatever the process I have explained you, this process is something which we call it as a business workflow. Business workflow. Business workflow means right from the incident happened, customer has made a request, from there to the claim settlements and repayment, claim payment. This is a complete workflow process. This workflow process on a high level note you see for any organizations remains same. You don't see any changes in this. But in terms of the timelines, in terms of the rules and regulations, in terms of the coverage and as well as benefits, in terms of the place of incident happen, depends on the geographical location, Whatever the rules and regulations I'm talking about, the business rules and regulations or something, may be varied from organization to organization. That requirement has to be updated. That requirement has to be documented by the business analyst. So if we being a business analyst, if you want to know about this, it is always important for us to understand this authentication authorizations requirement for sure. I am talking about this from the requirement perspective. If you want to implement this authentication authorization, whatever the oath principles are we talking about, oath 2.2 now and then we are using, this is the latest version we are using it. That will be done by the development team, because oath implementation 2.0 implementation will be done by the development team. If they want to implement oath principles in the changes which were benefited or which was managed, which was given by the customer, which was given by the business analyst, so that requirement we have to understand. So from the authentication and authorization point of view, from the authentication or authorization point of view, whatever the requirements was taken, the requirements, these requirements will be taken by the business analyst for two things. One is for desktop activities. You have to gather the requirements, and second, you have to take the requirements for the claim related stuff. Means you are accessing the data from the claims, whatever the claims updations we are doing. So requirement we have to do, we have to gather in these two areas. So when we are working on the claim center application, when you are going for an interview, there are some questions they will be asking you in such a way. What requirements you have gathered when there is any authentication authorization process happens being a technical BA. Do remember, there are some technical BA roles may also be there, not all the functional roles. We can see some technical business analyst roles will offer, technical business analyst roles will also be there. In some organizations, they expect. Of course, it will be there in the job description. That is a different thing altogether. So being into business analyst, one scenario is this. This is the scenario I have explained you. One scenario as far as the car example I have given. In this scenario, if you are a business analyst, there are some questions you come across from the security point of view. What are the what kind of requirements are you gathering, especially to manage oath principles when you are performing authentication authorization? This is a question you may come across. The answer is there are two type of requirements will be taken. One requirements will be taken for desktop activities, where we have to authenticate and authorize the user ID password which was given by the team. That must be security oath principles has to be given for that. So whatever the requirements are we gathering, the first type of requirements for desktop activities I am taking. This is point number one. Second type of requirements we are taking to view the claim, because claim submission was done. So once the claim submission was done, then we have to see the claim process. Whatever the required information they have given, to what extent this data, whatever the information they have given was right or not. So once it is reviewed based on their claim submission percentage, either it can be 80% or 100%, based on that claim submission will be done. Claim payments will be made by the insurance company. But for that, if you want to view the claims and all, this is what something which normally we do here. So requirements for viewing of the claims will also be taken. So if you are a BA, there are two questions you come across. There are two requirements will be taken. One requirements for the desktop activities, and second requirement is for view of the claims. So these are the two things which normally being into business analyst when you are going for authentication authorization is what something from the technical BA point of view when you are working on claim center in Guidewire is what something you must be good and familiar with.
So the second one is to ensure that the claim process, whatever we do, is that what you said about the claim process?
Yes, it is for the claim
first
process.
one is
View of
desktop
the, the second one about for the claim process. Next stage is a claim process one. View of the claim is something we do first. Then next we process the claims further. But if you want to process the claims, what we have to do, we need to verify the validate the data, what was given by the customer, what was given by the team. Okay, that has to be validated. So if you want to verify
Okay.
and validate, they have to update the data in the system. If they want to update the data in the system, that has to be, there must be some valid login credentials are required for the team to update the data. So for that, user ID password has to be given. So user ID password must be secure. It must be authenticated and authorized by someone. Someone means I am a user. Okay, I am a user. I should have a I should have a eligible. I should have the right. I should have that. I should have that right to use it, right? So because I cannot give this to others, right? So no other people can use it. So it's me, right? So who is going to log into the existing process? So for that reason, generally this authentication authorization is something which normally we do. Understood? Clear?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
from the requirement point of view, these are the two requirements you are taking. One is desktop related requirements you will be taken. Next requirements you will be taken from the claim center point of view. These are the two requirements you will be taken here. Understood? Clear? Yes or no?
Oh, yes, understood.
Right? So yeah. So next scenario I'm going to explain tomorrow. The other there is one more scenario, not authentication authorization, one more technical scenario that I'm going to discuss with you in tomorrow's session. Okay.
Okay.
Tomorrow we have
Thank
the
you.
same time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.